Hi friends, Mickey Mankis here and welcome to Out the Back Door. Today I want to show you how to use an all-American pressure canner. So some of you have reached out to me and you were questioning how does the American pressure canner work in comparison to say like a Mirro, Presto, a lot of different pressure canners that have a gasket in them, the rubber gasket. Well, there are several differences, so I want to share that with you today. First of all, we're talking about the gasket. All American pressure canners are made in the state of Wisconsin in the United States, so they are locally made at an aluminum foundry there. They do more than just making pressure canners. The gasket is actually an aluminum gasket that's one piece in your cover here, and it's a metal-to-metal gasket. The one thing that you've got to do to kind of maintain your gasket is you need to lubricate it. They recommend either using olive oil or Vaseline. What I usually do is olive oil. So I just put a little bit, try to get a little bit, onto a paper towel. Now I'm going to wipe this around the rim to put a super light coating of oil on it. The main reason that you want to keep the top of your canner lubricated when you're using it is because you don't want to get dry lock. I've reminded you in many different videos to read your manual if you just got a brand new canner. Read it front to back. I don't care how boring you think it is, please do read it. It really saved my backside when I first got my canner. Actually, my first canner was the 941. I have the 941, which is a 41 quart, and that's the largest that All American makes. I have the 930, which is a step down. It's the same diameter as this one, but it's as tall as the 941. So I can double stack in the 930 also. And then this is the 921. So I like this when I have smaller jobs to do, and I don't know how often I really have smaller jobs, or when I have a huge amount to do, I'll run 2 or 3 canners at the same time. Generally, it's like this one, the 921, and the 941 will fit on the stovetop together at the same time. The 930 will not, because being it's the same height, they're bumping into each other and it's just too tight. That's when I've got to get the extra burners out like in the garage and I go from there. But anyway, so the very first time I had used the 941, it was kind of like I was intimidated. To me, this was different than just using my Presto canner. And so I did read I read the manual front to back, in fact, 2 different times, and I did an error. I started canning after supper time, and I didn't finish until like 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when my pressure had finally dropped down to 0, and I was going to be able to take the cover off and remove my jars and get to bed. What happened though is I went and undid the wing nuts here, and it was like I couldn't turn my cover. It was locked on there. I had a dry lock, and I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, no, I remember reading about this in the manual. That's why I say, please read your manual. And it told me what had happened. I forgot to put oil on there, so it caused a dry lock. Now, the longer it's locked on there, the harder the vacuum is going to be pulling down, and you're going to have an extremely hard time trying to break that lock. It's possible to do it because I remember I went and I looked in the manual really quick, and it's like, okay, this is what I had to do with the screwdriver, and I did get it popped open. But when I broke that seal, it almost sounded like gunfire. Pow! You know, because it was locked down so tight. But anyway, that's why I'm saying read your manual, and if you are using an All-American, please make sure that you're putting either Vaseline or a light coating of the olive oil onto the top. Now, I don't do this every single time, especially if I'm doing many canning batches in a row. I might wait until maybe the 3rd or 4th batch. I'll put another coat of olive oil on there just to make sure. When I go and I wash these and I put them away for a day or 2, yes, then I'm going to definitely put a new coat of olive oil on it when I get ready to use it again. That's another difference, having the cast gasket on here, metal to metal, versus having a rubber gasket in there. There's no gasket to wear out or anything. So that's one of the first differences. Another difference you're going to have is on the other types of gasket canners, you're going to just twist and lock it into place. They have labels on these. They have a label on the top here. They have a label on here. This is going to face you. And there's also a little arrow on the cover here. There's a notch right here where we're going to be lining our arrow up with. So what I'm going to do is I just kind of place it down. I'm going to be moving the arrow so it lines up with that notch. Now you're going to notice, sometimes this one's a little particular. You're going to notice that there's, let me pull it off again so you show you, these little elbows. I don't even know what you call them, elbow bracket. Anyway, they are going to be fitting underneath the lips here where the wing nuts are connected. And that's what's going to help hold it down in place also, besides just the wing nuts. This one's always a stinker. And you may have to kind of rock it into place to get it there. All right. Once these are all underneath and lined up, you're going to use the wing nuts alternating on opposite sides. And you're going to bring them up. I tighten them down slightly. I don't crank on them right away. And then I'm going to go across here. And what I'm also watching for at the same time is to make sure that I've got an even space all the way around. So I'm not cranking down on one side tighter than the other. The reason for this is because you may start getting steam leaking out of one side because you've got it tightened down more on one end than the other. And I have had this happen with this particular canner quite often. It looks like it's all evened up, and I don't know, the backside here, just I get a spurty little liquid, you know, steam coming out of there when it's processing. I haven't been concerned about it because it really doesn't make that big of a deal. If I'm canning meats or something, especially quartz, and I know it's got to run for 90 minutes, then I may add a little bit of extra water in the bottom. But, okay, so now I'm going to check around. To me, it looks pretty even, and so then what I'm going to do, opposite sides, now I'll start cranking down on these. Now, guys, I know you have tons of muscles. You don't have to use all your muscles in comparison to women. Women, just crank it down pretty good. So this is what's going to be holding your cover down instead of just placing your gasket type top down and locking it in place with the handles. Another little bit difference, we have a regulator. Okay, so we all have our vent pipe, we all have a gauge that's going to show us our pressure and everything, but the difference with this, always make sure that this is clear. No matter what kind of a canner you're using, make sure that your vent pipe is clear before you're going to start using it. This is what we use on an All-American. It's a weighted gauge. It is a regulator, and it has 5 pounds, 10 pounds, and a 15 pound. There's little holes to set them on. Okay, so here's the 10 pound, which in our elevation, we use 10 pounds all the time. Okay, now you're gonna say, oh, but I have a Presto and I'm in the same elevation as you, but we run at 11 pounds. Don't worry about it. This type of a system is going to be 10 pounds. Once we come up to vent, so we always vent for 10 minutes, remember? All right, I'm gonna place this on here then. And that's all I've got to do, and I'm going to wait for the pressure to come up. The thing that I love about these, in comparison to like my 23 quart Presto, that I have to babysit. This will jiggle as soon as it comes to pressure. I can be on the other side of the room. I don't have to babysit the temperature. I will come over and keep an eye on it and slowly lower it so that this isn't jiggling wide open. You only need this jiggle a little bit, like every 1 to 2 minutes, and that's it. And I know I'm holding pressure here where I'm supposed to be. So that's the one nice thing about this. There is a different type of a weight that is similar to this that you can get for like a Presto that you don't have to babysit as much, and it kind of acts the same way. It'll jiggle. So anyway, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the All-American. Somebody did comment they had steam coming out a lot, and I did cover that area, but that's most likely you don't have your top on evenly, that you've got an even space all the way around. Okay, so around about, you vented for 10 minutes. You've put your weight on here for your appropriate elevation. You've come up to pressure. This only jiggles, like I said, a little bit. You don't need it constantly. That means you need to turn your temperature down. And remember, when you're working with a pressure canner, always slowly bring your temperature down, because you don't want it where it's all of a sudden drops below and you're going to have to start your timing from the beginning again. So you've processed for the proper amount of time. You've turned your burner off. Just leave it sit. Don't move it off the burner. No, please don't. Just don't. Another thing about the cast aluminum pressure canners, the All-American pressure canners, they're heavy. They're heavy in comparison to, say, a Presto or a Mirro, or I just can't think of all the other brands out there right now. Those are the common ones that just pop into my mind. But anyway, these are a lot heavier. I've heard of people warping the bottoms of their like Presto canners or whatever because the heat got too hot, or they ran out of water when they've been processing. I guess I've been very blessed. I've never pressure canned my canner dry so that I've warped it. I just don't know how that happens. That's one thing. You want to make sure that you're putting in the proper amount of water to begin with. Okay, here's a picture of my 941. I was getting it ready. If you can see, there's a water line in there. I've had some of you ask, do you put vinegar in your water when you can? No, I do not. I feel it's kind of a waste. To me, it's like the vinegar can affect your bands over time. If they're submerged in water with the vinegar, they're going to start oxidizing, and no, I don't use vinegar. I'm going to wash all my jars after I've checked the lids and everything. And I put them in warm soapy water, wash them all up and everything. And at that time, then I'm going to wash my bands and put those away also. So no, I don't put any vinegar in here because I've got hard water or whatever. You know what? I like that water line in there because that's my measuring point. I don't have to like constantly remember how many quarts of water am I pouring into my canner. That water line inside the canner from the hard water is my gauge. So I know how far to fill it up with water. Just remember, when you're canning, pressure canning specifically, and if your canner says you got to put 2 inches of water in, don't put your jars in and then add, 2 inches of water. Because if you took your jars out, you probably only have 1 inch in there. And maybe that's how people end up using up all the water where they're dry canning in there and they warp their canners. I don't know if anybody's ever warped an All-American, being it's so super thick. Don't try it though. Here's a picture of when I did add my 2 inches of water in there. You can see what it looks like, and I did that ahead of time. Okay, so your pressure is down to 0 now. And what you're going to do is you need to remove your weight regulator, and the residual steam is going to come out of here that may be contained in here. You want to wait 1 minute before you start removing your top. So I just set the timer really quick for 1 minute. Generally, there's just barely a stream coming out. By the time 1 minute's up, I don't have anything. One time I did notice I pulled the weight off the top and I had quite a bit of steam coming down. And I was double checking to make sure that I was sitting on 0 and I didn't have any pressure in here whatsoever. But anyway, so you wait the 1 minute. Once your 1 minute is up, now it's safe to take your top off. I'm just going to do the exact same thing, well, opposite. I'm going to alternate sides though to release the wing nuts. And I usually use my insulated leather gloves that you see me canning with all the time, because that gives me better dexterity as far as hanging on to things, and I can feel, and yeah, versus hot pad holders and towels, and that's the way it works for me really well. So anyway, maybe that's a good tip for you and it'll work well. So now I'm going to slowly turn this so that our elbows aren't locked underneath where the wing nuts are. All pressure canners, well, even water bath canners, when you're removing the top, pull it away from you. So I'm going to just gently lift it. Okay, all my steam's coming up, and I'm going to leave it sit. Now, it's recommended, I've started doing this a couple of years ago. Tattler recommends waiting 5 minutes before you pull your jars from the canner when you first take your top off. I've seen, I believe, Current Ball might be recommending the same thing. A lot of different places are saying leave your jars in there for 5 minutes before you remove them. Highly recommend do not leave your jars in there or with the cover on or whatever overnight because you're too tired. Please don't do that. You run the risk of flat sour. I don't know what the chemistry is, the scientific reasoning for it or whatever, but your food is not going to taste good if you just leave it in this hot atmosphere like that. You need to remove them, but wait 5 minutes. All right, reasoning for that waiting is because if you notice a lot of times your jars may be really boiling hard yet when you remove that top. The reasoning is there's still air escaping from the jars. It's still pulling down and making a better vacuum in those jars, and we don't want to disrupt that. All right, so I just, after I wait that 5 minutes or whatever, then I remove my jars. Doing Tattlers, if you do use Tattlers, you've got to tighten down the bands afterwards then, before you just let them sit and cool. But anyway, so I don't know if you can see in here, I've got a water line in my small one also. I've got a water line in all of my canners because it just makes it convenient for me. But yes, I do wash these out, especially if I've got siphoning. Yes, that happens to me. I'm human. When I've got it siphoning or whatever, and I've got to, wash out the inside and everything. So, I just wanted to show you really quick a couple of different ways you can store your canner if you're not going to use it for a while. You can always flip it upside down. And it fits securely inside of there so that the handle isn't up, especially if you're kind of limited on space of a shelving unit or something that you're sliding into. Otherwise, you can just set it up, slide it in. It's not going to hurt it any to put your wing nuts on there and tighten them up. Well, not really tighten them, but just there. Just loosely. And it holds it in place. Don't try to pick up your canner from the handle. Please don't do that. No, it's way too heavy. It's not made for that. The only reason the handle's here is to remove the top. Okay, so anyway, let me get this out of the way. If you want to continue, thank you for joining me. I am about to start canning my bone broth that I have made. And if you don't know how to make bone broth and would like to learn how, I'll leave a link for that so that you can check out the video. I've done a couple of them. At the same time, I've got my Tattler lids scalding on the back burner. I've got a big stock pot full of the ham bone broth that is boiling right now so that I can get that all together. I also have a stock pot in the sink with turkey bone broth in it waiting to get on the burner as soon as I pull the ham off. So yeah, let me start getting things organized here and we'll move on to the bone broth part. All right, I had my jars in the oven at 225 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. That will sterilize my jars, but it's not necessary because I am pressure canning and it will be happening for over 10 minutes. Now, the Tattlers are just about ready. I'm going to be leaving about a 3/4 of an inch head space, give or take. I'm not quite sure how many jars I'm actually going to need. I think I only need like about 5, possibly 6 for the turkey bone broth. And so I pulled out regular mouth for that. I'm going to be putting the ham in the wide mouth. And that way I'm going to be able to tell the difference when I pull them out and then I go to mark them. Now I do have the burner on underneath my pressure canner, the 941, so that the water's heating up. I had put hot water in it to begin with. I want everything good and hot so that this won't take very long. So I'm just going to keep filling these up right now. All right, you want to make sure to wipe your rims clean. I've got a damp paper towel here. And once I get these done, I'm going to get the lids on. Now when I heat my lids, I always put 1 or 2 extras in there, just in case. I can fill more jars just in case one of them isn't working really well. The way that I did it this time is being that I have regular mouth jars also, and I don't have as many to do as I have the wide mouth. I'm going to do them last, so I put those at the very bottom so I can grab them when I get to them. Also, I don't want the jars uneven on the bottom row of my large canner here. I am going to be double stacking these, so I will be putting another tray in between the layers. You may be wondering, what would I be doing with all this bone broth? Well, other than making soup and stew out of it, you know, using it as a base, you can use it to make gravy. I like to cook my rice in it. It adds more flavor to it. So get my bands on. Oh my goodness. Those are some very hot jars. Okay, fingertip tight. I know, everybody's fingertip is different. The purpose of the band is just to hold the lid down. You want all that air to be able to escape out of there. And I realize those of you that are just starting with Tattlers, there may be a little bit of a learning curve for you, okay? So what I've done is like, all right, get it on here. On there straight. See, I have issues at times. I don't like that band. All right. I've put it on there as far as I can. I'm just going to kind of push on the middle a little bit. Tighten it up. See, my jar's spinning around. It's tight enough. You don't need it any tighter than that. And then that way, I get the ones on that are in the center there. And like I said, these are super hot. Okay, as soon as I get these all banded up, I'm going to start loading up my canner on the bottom. And I will get the rest of my jars pulled out. And I think I've got enough ham broth to do one more jar. And then the rest will be the turkey broth. Now, my 941, All-American 941, that can hold 18 quarts, I believe. See, I should have looked at my little note card, and I don't know where I set that. That was another tip. I'll just tell you really quick. So that you remember how many jars you can get into each canner, no matter what size it is, what I've done is I do a dry run. I take my jars and I fill my canner up and say, okay, this many wide mouth quarts go in there. And then I do it with the regular size mouth, and I put them in there, and this how many will fit in there. And that's even if I'm double stacking, so I know how many I can get in there. I do the same thing with my pints, my half pints. I'll put in there my half-gallon jugs, how many half-gallon jugs I fit in there. So that's just a little tip, but I put it down on a note card, and I don't know where I set my note card. So there we go. I believe it's 18 quarts that I can fit in there. I already have put olive oil on the top of my canner here. I should have my step stool out so I don't have to tippy-toe, because I'm running the chance of laying my arm on the top of the canner and burning myself. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. All right, so far I have gotten 10 of the wide mouth quarts of the ham bone broth on the bottom layer of the All-American 941 canner. You may be thinking, wow, your turkey bone broth is dark. It's very concentrated. When I made this batch, I didn't put as much water in, so it's extremely concentrated. If I'm going to be using this for a soup, I'd be adding more water to it because it's very strong. And I thought I had gotten most of the fat removed from this. I don't mind a little bit of fat, but I don't like when there's a big layer of it top of the broth after it's canned. I'm going to finish filling these up, wipe the rims down, get the lids on and the bands and everything, and I'm going to set these into the top layer of the canner. Okay, 2 of my jars, one of the ham bone broth and one of the turkey bone broth didn't quite fill up the quarts, but I'm still going to pressure can them anyway. Now I did turn the temperature up so that it starts coming up, so it'll start venting a little bit quicker, being that we do have hot jars and hot broth and a hot canner, so we shouldn't have to wait real long. Once we come up to vent, I'm going to time for 10 minutes, and then I'll put my weight on 10 pounds, like I said, for our elevation here. You do according to your elevation. And so once we come up to pressure, I am going to process the quartz for 25 minutes. That's it. That's what I like about the bone broth. It goes really quick. So when we get ready to start taking these out, I'll show you that step. Okay, there we go. As soon as this starts, you can start your timer for processing. I've got it set for 25 minutes, and I'm going to slowly lower my temp. Because I don't need it jiggling that often. You'll kind of learn where your sweet spot is on your dial, depending on the size of canner that you're using also. All right, I'm gonna slowly keep bringing this down until it's only jiggling, like I said, once every 1 to 2 minutes, and that's it. All right, our pressure is down to 0. So I am going to remove the regulator weight. I'll set my timer for 1 minute. As soon as the timer's done, I'll take the top off. Okay, now I'm going to wait about 5 minutes. They don't seem to be boiling super bad, but I'm still going to wait. We'll take a close look at this. Okay, you can kind of see them boiling a bit yet. Not too bad though. You know how to safely do this? I'm going to go get my step stool. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to be able to definitely tell the difference between the turkey broth and the ham broth. The ham's a lot lighter. Okay, these are the 2 jars that I said I didn't have enough to fill them up completely. I want to talk to you about that really quick. I'm going to put these in the pantry, but I'm going to put them at the very beginning. So those are going to be the first ones that I grab. And the reasoning for that is kind of like if you don't have enough headspace in, you could end up with seal failures down the road. They just may not seal right away. But not having enough food in your jars can cause failures also. So that's not a good thing. All right, I'm just going to keep unloading this. I'm sure you know what it's like to unload a canner. Kind of wanted to give you start to finish, you know, on the All-American. That's some nice looking broth. Well, I should have been recording the whole time. When I took this jar out here and I set it down to tighten down the band, I accidentally knocked it over and I heard it go and it did leak some, so I know the seal is broken on that one already. So I guess I'm using that one this weekend. Yeah, you gotta watch yourself when you're working with the jars, especially when they're hot and you're using Tattlers. So that's what our broth looks like, our bone broth and everything. And all right, so I've got my bone broth all ready. I'll check on the lids tomorrow and make sure that they're all sealed well and everything, and take the bands off, wash them up and everything, and wash my bands too. I'll mark them and get them down into the pantry. Now, like I said, the dark stuff is more of a concentrated. It's my turkey bone broth, and the rest of it, it's my ham bone broth. I will be using this fairly soon because I wanted to do a ham and bean soup. I just don't have the time to do it right now, so I decided canning up the broth right away, the bone broth, would be my best bet. And when I'm ready to do the soup, then I've got it ready. All right, and I hope you learned something about the All-American canners. If you do have an All-American canner already and you use it, if you've got any tips or tricks that you'd like to share that I might have overlooked or whatever, please leave them in the comments, because, you know, that's going to help everybody out. So anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the video today. Thank you for joining me, and if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. If you did like, give me a thumbs up and share. That helps the channel out. And so, until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless. So, what was I talking about? Oh.